Here's some of the best cars you should buy that actually have some of the best engines that will drive this vehicle hundreds of thousands of miles. If you don't want to learn your service writer's dog's name, or you don't want to take out a second mortgage for that car repair, or possibly you don't want to worry about waiting for that next tow truck driver, you're going to enjoy this list of 5 of the most amazing vehicles with reliable engines that will make this vehicle last forever. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
And here we have the XA20, the second generation of the Toyota RAV4. Runs from about 2001 to about 2005. And it's one of those vehicles that you still see a lot of them out on the road because they're ultra reliable. They've been built extremely well. And what we're talking about in this generation, you can get 3 different engine configurations. The 1.8 liter, which features a front wheel drive only. You can also ramp up to the 2 liter, which this vehicle has. And that one has all wheel drive as an option. Or you can step up to the later generation and the 2.4. But trust me when I say the 2.4 was one of Toyota's weak spots. Weaker piston rings and oil burning and consumption. That was one of those engines that made the radar for one of their worst engines on the planet. That said, this is one of their best engines. The 1.8 is a little underpowered, but it's this 2 liter VVTi engine is one of those engines that are notoriously reliable and well known and well renowned for Toyota longevity. Right there is one of these vehicles that if you can find one of these with decent miles on it and it's well kept, this vehicle will run hundreds of thousands of miles. With equipment that's easy to access, filters, and all kinds of component changes, means it's a great do-it-yourselfer wagon, or maybe you just like to take your vehicle into the local service shop and have one of your independent shops fix it for you. It's an easy vehicle to work around, and any small independent shop can fix these at ease because it's such a simple vehicle. So shop rates are low. Parts costs are very, very low on any of these vehicles, and it's going to be a very affordable vehicle to run for hundreds of thousands of miles. So of those 3 engines, the 1ZZ is the 1.8 you don't want. The 2AZFE is one of those with the 2.4 liter, and you also found those in the Camrys in the later 2000s, 06 to 09, and they were very problematic and also shared in these vehicles, so you don't want those. It's this vehicle here, the 2.0 VVTi, called the 1AZFE, is an inline 4-cylinder engine, all aluminum, 4 valve per cylinder, coil per plug, and features a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now those buyers that know what the VVTi is, the variable valve timing system, in Toyota's world means that it's giving the best of breathing opportunities. Variable valve timing means that you get the low end torque, but you also get the high breathing at higher RPMs as the RPMs come up. It's a very drivable vehicle with good performance, good fuel economy, and very high levels of affordability for maintenance, and is one of those rare beasts that is built to last forever. Another one of the most legendary engines you'll ever find at any point, and now it's getting up there in age, but they were known and renowned for some of the longest living diesel engines, and Mercedes were using them as taxi cabs. They were utilized everywhere for high service factor and high service duty, because some of these generational Mercedes-Benz actually were built to last a significant amount of miles. Underneath the engine compartment, you had a turbo diesel, iron block, iron heads, a single overhead camshaft, chain driven, and it was just ruthlessly reliable. This particular generation was from a time when Mercedes-Benz could put together a very aggressively reliable vehicle that was built for tons of miles. But what we're talking about is the W116 300D. And these harkened all the way back from 1974 to 1991 in the rest of the world, but the 300D was exclusive for North America only. And so that's why you didn't see them for a long period of time, but these were utilized across Europe for many, many years with that very, very reliable engine under the hood of these fine Mercedes-Benz. You get the big 3-pointed star right there back when it mattered. Of course, right here you have the massive grille, and these were very prominent vehicles. Very nice indeed all the way around. The parts were all well made, you know, classic wheels, high quality fit and finish all over the place, old school chrome handles, look, even key actuated. Beautiful little tail lights that almost look like they were handcrafted. Lots of room in the back, front, as well as everywhere else. These were true luxury cars in every sense of the word. But in the various iterations from 74 to 91, the power output ranged anywhere from 79 all the way up to 227 horsepower. And the engine we're describing is the OM617 by Mercedes-Benz. And the next one is another very durable model that's been around a long time. Unfortunately, this latest generation is swapped out. This 5th generation, though, is the ultimate in reliability. This does feature all sorts of off-roading features and technology, but most importantly, an all-aluminum 4-liter V6 engine under the hood of this vehicle does produce about 270 horsepower. It's also coupled up to a 5-speed automatic transmission, does give you 4-wheel drive, and a whole host of other amenities, which we'll talk about. The Toyota 4Runner's been around for decades. Now, with the exception of the first generation of the 3-liter back many moons ago, those had issues with head gaskets and a few other problems. Get around that, and since then they've been a true workhorse. This latest iteration does feature the 4-liter engine, which of course is naturally aspirated, and most importantly does give you the port and direct fuel injection coupled together, ensuring that you don't have a collection of carbon in the intake valves or the intake manifold. It just stays clean and mean, and it's a fighting machine. Now, there is a base SR5, which, believe it or not, actually comes with a 2-wheel drive platform, as this is built on a full-size truck platform, as very similarly to the Tacoma. Generally, everybody buys them with 4-wheel drive. The SR5 4-wheel drive in the Trail Edition does give you a very robust all-wheel drive system throughout. The limited model like this gets you the full-time all-wheel drive system. Many people like to be able to shift their own gears and their differentials accordingly. You can do that with the Trail Edition 4-wheel drive system, as well as the SR5, and as well you can get the active traction control system, the A-Track, and on top of it, the Trail Edition comes with the kinetic dynamic suspension system, in other words, the KDSS, crawl control system, which allows you a very controlled descent or climb on very aggressive rocks and stumps and off-roading conditions. In some models, you're able to get a locking rear differential, and while these vehicles were never really intended to be fuel misers, they're not the cheapest on gas, they do get the dual VVTi, in other words, the double variable valve timing system, to truly optimize their performance at low speed, high speed, as well as incorporate the best of possibilities for fuel economy. Now, while there is a 4-speed automatic available with the inline 4-cylinder engine, that's rarely the option most people go with. Generally, people go with the more up-level trim, limited. Of course, you get beautiful alloy wheels, beautiful finishing on the back. These 4Runners are glorious. Rear slider at the back. Of course, you do get a small amount of glass on the roof. On top of it, you get this beautiful roof rack here. They do give you chrome handles, beautiful step guards, lots of other interesting components like these nice fold-away mirrors, and as well these very strong and robust looking headlights. Means you get a vehicle that feels very truck-like and drinks fuel like that as well, but is designed to run hundreds of thousands of miles simply because of that amazing engine called the 1GR FE V6 that you'll find under the hood of this great stout off-road unit. Jeeps have always been synonymous with fun, off-roading capability, but unfortunately, recent years, Stellantis has taken them over, and some quality, in many people's opinions, have started to take a back seat. Of course, here we do still have the fancy clasp Tonka truck type grille on it, the flip-up front trunk, of course, with all the big hinges, means you can pull the doors off all sides, you can take the roof off, and it's a very versatile vehicle that a lot of younger buyers typically love these. There's such an aftermarket for tunability, for sure, lots of lift kit, big tires, and of course there's a lot of available features to improve the performance off-road as well as the looks of the vehicle. But unfortunately, in recent years, a lot of these engines have changed. You know, now you get a turbo 4-cylinder engine. You can also get a Rubicon 392 like this one right here, which gives you the big powering V8. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of gas too. But instead, most Jeeps typically have either 2 or 4 doors, the availability for, of course, going off-roading, and in some cases, locking front differentials. A very versatile off-road capable vehicle. But of course, some of these now are hybrids, 2-liter turbo 4s. Some of them have this 3.6-liter V6 under the hood called the Pentastar, is not the most reliable. And before that was the 3.8, which was an absolute dog, wouldn't even make it 60 or 70,000 miles without catastrophically failing. So unfortunately, Jeeps have gone through some hardships, but it hasn't always been like that. Because I personally owned a Jeep like this many years ago. Mine was a 1998, because back in 96, to 2006 was what they called their TJ, or the Jeep had a 4-liter straight 6. Instead of having the V6, they had an inline 6. 4 liters, 292 displacement. You could couple that up to a manual or an automatic gearbox. Mine was a manual gearbox, and it was a lot of fun to drive. It didn't have a ton of power. It was about 190 horsepower with about 220 pound-feet of torque. But that engine was known to be one of the most reliable engines that Jeep has ever made, and one of the most reliable engines ever made. And with a whole ton of iron into the block and the heads meant these engines were just durable. And many owners have seen 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles out of those engines. They've lasted a long time. As a matter of fact, it's at the point now, and you look on the secondary market, it's hard to find a Jeep TJ from 96 to 2006 with low miles. And even those that are, the sellers are asking top dollars because they know exactly what they have. Jeep has never made an engine that durable and that reliable like they did back with that 4-liter straight 6 engine. Therefore, these are the engines you're definitely going to want to buy if you're serious about going off-roading, if you're serious about keeping your Jeep on the road for a long period of time. They're seriously durable. As a matter of fact, the only thing they went through when AMC initially designed them back a decade earlier was they over time tuned the cam timing, the fuel metering systems. Fuel injection systems did change throughout the years slightly, and the only major changes that went through that engine was just an effort to try to drone out some of the vibration and try to make that engine even smoother than it already was. Most inline 6-cylinder engines are inherently very smooth and vibration free, and these engines did not disappoint. So before we get on to number 5, we also have a bonus engine that we're going to add on to the end. I realized it has to make the list. It's absolutely ruthless, one of the best engines ever made, and you're definitely going to want to stick around to the end for that. Right here's number 5, and we're talking about a BMW B58 engine. Yes, now many would say this is an honorable mention. Many would laugh at the very thoughts of having a BMW on a list of some of the most reliable engines. Believe it or not, they are starting to pile up with some significant miles on them. They're lasting a long time. They're a little easier to maintain, and they're certainly a lot better than the previous generation engines, the N55 and the N54 before it, which was an absolute disaster. Now the latest B58 engine is a turbocharged 3-liter inline 6 you're finding in many different models. Like this X5, you find it in X6, you find it in the 3 Series, 4 Series cars, 2 Series cars, you name it. It's one of their most versatile engines, and it's what BMW's known for: hot dogs, football games, and straight 6 engines. And that's what you're going to find in a lot of these models. Now here we have an X5. Here's you get the laser lights. Of course, this blue beam, people were complaining that those were extremely bright, but they work. Beautiful laser cut rims. Love this little detail in here. Of course, you have this nice little touch accent in, and a large glass panel on top to keep all those happy, joyous little people in there. As you cycled around, you've got this nice little contoured line right here, and right there you have this bulbous hood. Now this latest generation is a little sleeker. It's not as big and as bulky as some of the older generation X5s, but in fact you can also get this in a twin turbo V8, which I would not recommend. But if you're going to look for something with the B58 and it's an X5 or 3 or 4 series, really it matters less about the model and more about the engine. Start around 2018 and go to current generation, and you're going to find they've slowly improved them. They've done things like heat encapsulation, so it adjusts for higher swings, the extreme cold, the extreme hot, and it's those hot and temperature swings that wreaks havoc on plastics under the hood. So they've got that sorted out. They've got a better fuel system, upgraded fuel injectors, stronger fuel pump. They've also got more bracing in the case of the engine. They've also got better revised turbochargers, and on top of it, better cooling system that's more robust, more effective. 2 systems actually combined, but more importantly, one thing to remember is no more electric water pumps. Now they've gone back to the mechanical water pumps. T-stats, still a potential leak point, but other than a few of the coolant issues, these B58 engines are absolutely ruthless, powerful, tunable, and very reliable. Yes, you can get them in almost every model, but just make sure that you're buying something 2018 or newer, and make sure that it's got the B58 connotation to it. Then you know you've got yourself a BMW that's going to last a long time. What do we have here? This is a Buick, and welcome back to the 6th and the bonus engine that I could not ignore. Now, General Motors has built a lot of duds over the years, but they've also had a few big winners. Buick is one of those manufacturers back in the 80s and 90s, had some amazing drivetrains. The engine was so good, in fact, that they developed them further and landed a supercharger on top of some of these engines too. You saw some of the cars like the Camaros, the Buick LeSabre, the Buick Park Avenue, Buick Regal, and the Buick Riviera were just some of the models that you found this next engine in. The engine was so good, in fact, that still to this day, if you can find one, keep it. They'll run literally forever. They don't break. With a little bit of maintenance and a little bit of oil services, these cars run forever. That's not something you can say about a lot of the modern day General Motors products or the Fords or the Toyotas, or the list goes on and on. But the General Motors 3800 V6, 3.8 liter V6 is one of those spectacular pieces you need to get your hands on. If you don't have one already, they may be just a jalopy by now. Half of them are rusted out and the other half might be, unfortunately, in the wrecking yards. For the few good ones left around, that 3800 is definitely an engine to keep. And with all of that said, you're definitely going to want to check out those. If you want something a little bit newer, possibly a brand new 2025, there are in fact some very reliable models. Fewer, but there still are some great ones out there. Hope to see each and every one in the next one, everybody. See you real soon. Bye-bye.